I'm now going to hand over to Dr. James Kievy, who will wrap up and close the conference for today. I'm sure Dr. Keevy does not require any introduction, but I will introduce him to those that have joined us now or international guests. Dr. Keevy is an experienced policy researcher that has worked in South Africa, Africa, and internationally for the last 25 years. Following 13 years at SAQA, the South African Qualifications Authority, in research policy and international liaison capacities, he then joined Jet Education Services in 2014 as the CEO. He's worked with a large number of international agencies, the OECD, ILO, World Bank, Commonwealth, Secretariat, etc. And his main expertise at the moment is around overseeing large multinational research and evaluation teams. And his focus, of course, is to ensure that these executive programs are robust and efficient in manner. So I'm going to hand over to Dr. Keevy, who's going to wrap up with us this afternoon. And I think from my side, James, it's a final goodbye and you can close because we are a little bit, we may run a little bit out of time. We are. So over to you, Dr. Keevy. Thanks.
Thank you, Roxana. It's not every day I get called Dr. Keevy by you, so I'll accept that. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for staying with us for the morning. I think where I want to start just in the next 10 minutes or so is just to slow things down a little bit. My daughter has this saying TMI. I'm not sure if you guys would be familiar with it, too much information. I think we got a lot of information this morning, particularly those of you that have not been involved with us over the last 4 years on this PSEC cloud path. So let's slow down a little bit and just talk about where we are today and what came out of the session this morning. I think one of the key takeaways for me would be that we're working in an interdisciplinary space. Many of us, if not most of us that are part of this discussion today, are from the education and training space. We had the techies come talk to us today, but I think a lot of us listened to them and thought wow, what are you guys talking about? And I think there's something about the PSEC cloud and about education internationally that is crossing over between technology and education. And it's not an easy space to be, this interdisciplinary space. How can we kind of bridge this crossover between the two disciplines? And I think the PSEC cloud is starting to do that. It's not to say that there are not other examples, and we'll talk more about them tomorrow, that are happening in South Africa, but the PSEC cloud is definitely kind of a focus today and a topic of choice. I'm reminded, Roxana, of SAQA and NQF. Julie, you were on the call, John Hart, many people that work in the NQF space were with us today. I'm reminded of the early years of the NQF development. Samuel Isaacs used to quote Paulo Freire, and he used to speak about making the road by walking it. Maybe today we've got a new social construct that's at our doorstep. It's something quite foreign to us. We're not quite sure what to do with it. It's very digital, it's very abstract. Like Lazelle said, or Paul said, where's the cloud? But there's something here that can catapult our country into a space where we link supply and demand, where we link unemployment and competencies in a very agile way, in a way that countries across the world are not able to do. And we're well positioned to do it, barring a very few countries across the world. I think we have an opportunity. We had over 500 registrations for the 2 days. While the attendance, of course, varies, there's definitely a huge interest in terms of what we're talking about today. I attended, I was part of a CHIA, the Council on Higher Education Accreditation in the US think tank last week. And one of the things that I raised there was, and I'll just bear with me if I say the following to you and see whether it works for you. In the Middle Ages, people used to talk about when a king or a queen passes away, they say, the king is dead, long live the king. It's a way to say that there's succession from one king or one queen to the next. How about we just butcher that phrase a little bit and we say the qualification is dead, long live the credential. Is that something you can live with today, the group that's in our conference today? The qualification is dead, long live the credential. And we've got to be careful with this because as we saw coming out today, terminology and nomenclature can get in the way. I was listening to Julie's panel with John and all the others that were on a panel. And I thought maybe we get stuck on the term credential because actually we mean the same thing. I was listening to Boreen today in the early session. Those of you that were not with us early, one of the things Boreen, who leads education at UNESCO, spoke about was we want to leverage technology while we protect learners. So this is the risk to us as we engage this new social construct that's at our doorstep. We need to leverage technology, but we also need to protect our learners. A key concept that underpins the PZ Cloud is sovereignty or self-sovereignty, or if you want to be fancy, like the techie spoke to us today about SSI, self-sovereign identity. But at the end of the day, sovereignty is a very important principle of this new social construct that we're talking about today. Look at the events in Ukraine over the last couple of days. We're all up in arms when a country's sovereignty is threatened. All of us, in different ways, and notwithstanding the politics. But when the sovereignty of an individual is threatened, none of us make a fuss about it. I mean, the reality is in our world that we live today, our personal identity, our personal data is abused on so many different fronts. And the challenge I would put to you today, if you're from a government institution or a university or a college or a CETA, how are you managing the data of individuals in your own organization and your own system? Do you ask permission from the individual before you use their data? Is it possible for you to do that? I think Lohan spoke very kind of carefully around this, that the transaction cost, and Carl also mentioned this, the transaction cost of asking and validating is incredibly expensive. So how do we reduce that transaction cost? Well, we've got the technology right here in our country. We have people like those that were talking to us today that are doing cutting edge work, not only in South Africa, not only in the continent, but internationally. So we've got the technology. So the next question is, where's the ecosystem? Quite a few people spoke today about like, we're ready, but we need the ecosystem to be with us. So what the PZ Cloud has done over the last 4 years is we've gradually brought the ecosystem close to us. It doesn't mean we have all the players in the ecosystem. We're focusing on PZ, so post-school. We're not focusing on basic education, but of course there's an interlink between the schooling system and recognition of qualifications at a school leaving level. So the ecosystem is getting there. It's not there yet, but it's definitely getting there. So the challenge we have at the moment is that how do we connect the dots between the ecosystem and the technology? And I think a really important point that came out of the last panel session that Mo chaired, and I think, Chris, you mentioned this, we must not forget about power. When we've been working with NQFs over the last 30 years, one of the key fundamental principles of NQFs is that they are linked to power structures. Let's not kid ourselves to think that a digital platform as the one we're talking about today is not linked to power. And this is where the governance comes in. So how can we think about new forms of governance that embrace these new concepts, these new social constructs? The CC by PPP model that Paul and Chris spoke about in Moore's session will be discussed in a bit more detail tomorrow. Is this something that makes sense for you? Is this something that you think we can bring government, private sector, citizens, civil society, public sector closer to us? We'll talk more about that today because we feel as a program group, as a project team, we are ready for this discussion. And that's what's on the agenda for tomorrow. The other things we'll talk about tomorrow will be what are the complementary systems happening in South Africa? And we'll hear from the Pathway Management Network and others tomorrow. We'll also hear a bit more about the MVP. So this notion of a minimum viable product has been long in the making. And what you'll see tomorrow quite early in the day, well, kind of in the middle of the day, would be a short video clip that summarizes the MVP and where we are. So let me try and summarize what the PZ Cloud is about. It's really about three things. It's about self-sovereign identity and protecting data and protecting the rights of citizens. And I think I've spoken about that quite a bit. But it's also about credentials and credential fluency. Now, this is something we haven't really spoken about today, but this is a concept we've been working with from a research space over the last couple of years that talks about formal, non-formal, and informal learning being recognized as equal value. And using digital systems like the PZ Cloud platform, we can now code learning outcomes in a way that it doesn't matter how they've been acquired. Of course, this is not a simple solution, and there's a lot of discussion internationally about how this gets done. But I would argue that we do have the technology. It's about bringing the ecosystem closer to us. The next component, so the three components, the first one is self-sovereign identity. The second one is credential fluency and understanding learning and all its facets. And then the third component of the PZ Cloud is the notion of interoperability. It came up a few times today, and I want to just emphasize that what the PSET Cloud's trying to do is not to replace data systems, whether it's a SACWA or a DHET or a private provider or a public university. The idea with the PSET Cloud is to build those bridges between the existing data systems in a way that is authentic, that is credible, and protects the privacy of the individual's data that is being looked at. I think the idea of linear scaling, Carl, I think you mentioned this, is really important. We can scale this in a linear way, and a lot of work that you'll see coming from this team that you see in the conference today would be on linear scaling. MERSITA is the first part of our linear scale. Wayne spoke to this morning. MERSITA is the early adopter, and it's the first kind of tick in the linear scale that we're busy with, and it's not easy. Talk to Wayne, talk to Sebelelo, talk to Mo. It's not straightforward. Our data systems are not ready for this transition, but we can get there, and MERSITA's come a long way around this. So my challenge today would be, other CETAs, are you ready for this? SACWA, quality councils, are you ready for this? Because if we can scale in a linear way, we can create the critical mass that the ecosystem needs to really catapult South Africa into a space that we can connect the supply and demand that is such a problem in our country. And we don't have to wait 10 years. We've got the technology, we've got the ecosystem. We just need to link these two. So as we move towards tomorrow, 3 questions that I would want to leave to you for this afternoon and perhaps for tonight. The first one is, what is the potential of the PSET Cloud to move South Africa forward in the way that I've described? Talking to Carl and Luan today, they were very confident that we're ready. How about you, if you work in a different environment, maybe not as technologically kind of advanced as the kind of things we heard today? Are we ready? Is our government ready? The second question I would ask all of us today is, are we agile enough to leapfrog? Are we going to get caught into 10 years of going through a process that many other countries have gone through, but South Africa doesn't actually need to go through? We can leapfrog a lot of the pain that other countries have gone through, and we can do it quickly. But do we have the courage and the political will to do that? And that's a question that you're going to have to answer tomorrow. I don't think I can answer it. My last question for you for tomorrow is, what will it take to make this idea work, this vision of a PSET Cloud, of an interoperable system that protects the sovereignty of individuals and that is able to recognize learning in all its facets? The PSET Cloud is only one piece of this puzzle. It is not the only piece. And so a lot of other things need to fall into place, but I think we're moving in the right direction. The team has been at it for 4 years, so this is not something new you're hearing from us today. And we're very excited about what we're going to bring to you in the coming weeks and months. And this is a call for you to be part. Tomorrow morning, when we talk about the governance model, we're going to make an open call for everybody to be part of that. And we're going to look at 4 key constituencies. The citizen. So there will be place for citizens to be part of this governance model. There will be place for civil society. And the associations really play an important role, but civil society in its entirety, the public sector and the private sector. These are the 4 constituencies that we're arguing based on the work and the discussions that we've had to date should be part of this interim governance model. It'll be called a launch group to start with, for want of a better word. I resisted calling it a steering committee because I think it's such a traditional way of calling it. But in essence, this will be the start or the early stage of a governance model. So join us tomorrow morning at 8:15. We're going to talk about governance, we're going to talk about other initiatives, and we're going to show you what the minimum viable product of the PSET Cloud looks like. Thank you for joining us today, and enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you early tomorrow morning. Thank you very much.